Hi, I'm Peter Haddock, and I'm at CONEXPO on the Ritchie Bros stand for another Inside Edge panel discussion. And this one you're going to enjoy, folks, because it's all about what's happening in America right now. And I'm joined by Matt, I'm joined by Mike, Alex, and Bob, and they're going to introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about their role, and also about their role in the life cycle, the future life cycle management of equipment. So Matt, tell me a little bit about yourself and your role at Ritchie Bros.
Thanks, Peter. Matt Ackley, Chief Marketing Officer of Ritchie Bros. You and I have been talking for a while now. So, you know, my background, a lot of online background, came to Ritchie Bros. About 6 years ago via an acquisition. And what's really been interesting is to watch the transformation of Ritchie Bros. Over those past 6 years. Yep. Historically, Ritchie Bros. is a 65-year-old company. Historically known for live auctions, but we're here at CONEXPO now. And this is someplace we haven't been in a while. And one of the reasons we're here at CONEXPO is because we do so much more now, right? We are not only about the buying and selling of equipment, but we've brought together a bunch of services to help, equipment owners throughout the entire life cycle of the equipment lifespan, right? And so, we run auctions. Right, we run different channels now. We run Ritchie List, which allows you to sell it yourself. We have a new marketplace offering, which you can buy anytime. But we have all these other services now, which is really cool, and we're showcasing them here at CONEXPO. We have Rouse Services, a company we acquired several years ago, to provide insights and data around equipment values and rental utilization. We have Smart Equip, right, which helps you manage parts procurement and the entire life cycle of the equipment. Many years ago, we launched Ritchie Bros. Financial Services, and Mike's going to talk a little bit about the partnership there. But just, what we're really proud about is we're not just about the buying and selling of equipment anymore. We're about helping people manage that entire lifespan of the equipment through that ownership life cycle.
And what that's doing, folks, is it's taking the pressure off the equipment owner, because the equipment owner has got to make money using the equipment. And this is what people want nowadays. They just want to be able to concentrate on looking out into that zone where they're digging, whatever they're doing, and that's really important. And Mike, what's really important is when I'm starting my business or when I'm growing my business, I need money. And Mike is the guy that you need to talk to when you need money. Mike, tell me a little bit about yourself and the whole finance element that you're involved with, and the fact that you're working with Ritchie Bros. In this kind of partnership that supports the sort of future dreams of people that are actually going to start their own business and grow their own business.
Right. Sure, Peter. So what we do is we work with manufacturers across the country. We work with resellers, and we work with vendors, independent dealers like Bob's Group. And we work with them differently. Their go-to-market is very different depending on what markets they're serving and what type of equipment they're selling. And so we put together programs to work with their end user customers so that they can use that equipment, so they can grow their companies, they can feed their families, they can go on vacations and send their kids to school. And primarily we're working with the smallest of small businesses to the medium-sized businesses. So think of landscapers all the way up to large contractors across the country. I've been in this business 25 years. I'm currently with First Citizens Bank Equipment Finance. We're a 125-year-old firm, and it's the core to our business. We want to understand their market more than we want to understand finance. Finance is pretty simple. Take an application and lend, service them like we were servicing them in their name, but working with them on what their needs are. And the big one that's been coming up a lot over the last couple of years has been true fair market value transactions. We went through 12, 14 years of very low interest rates. Yep. And so there was very little demand for fair market value. And what dealers are looking for and what their customers are looking for are short-term rentals, get the equipment back and manage the asset. The supply chain really hit that one home. And through that, our business has grown dramatically over the years.
We've got to ask the question. You've said there, record low interest rates, but that's changed. And that has changed on a global basis. And I think, there's a lot of people out there when you're starting your own business, when you are a small to a medium-sized business, that you can hit that crunch and interest rates going up, things like that. How do we look at the industry right now? Is it a space where people like you are still able to support those businesses? And what are the things you're doing to help people understand the costs, and I guess the risks that they're taking by starting a business or growing a business.
Sure. Certainly over the last year, but the market was really increasing the year before. The market was moving, the Fed was moving behind it, almost by about a year. And so we've been feeling this pressure, this margin pressure, and the end users, the clients that are using this equipment, obviously they're putting out more cash for the same piece of equipment when they're putting it on a loan. And that's where I see a lot of the movement going to a fair market value lease, so that they're not obligated to worry about that balloon at the end. If they want the equipment, they can purchase it for that fair market value or not. And that reduces their monthly payment considerably. And that's why I think we're seeing that growth in that space. That, and it's good for our vendors because they can manage the supply chain better than what they could in the past.
So I'm a young person starting out my own business. I'm going to pop over to Ritchie Bros. I'm looking at the marketplace. Nothing's coming up. I'm going onto the online auction. I buy something, yeah? But, you then come in and say, hey, Peter, you're looking good. I'm going to lend you some money. But I'm saying, well, hold on, I've seen this asset. We've gone through the inspection reports, and now I've got to do something with this. Will you support those people in that process as well to look at how they can to buy the asset, add value to that asset, and then put it to work?
And that's the conversation that our folks have with their customers. And that's the real value, is one size doesn't fit all.
Yeah.
So it might be a 24-month rental, it could be a 3-year rental. They might want to buy it after 5 years. It might be a heavy piece of equipment that they want for a long period of time. What I would suggest is, if you're in the position to purchase equipment and finance equipment today, do it today. Because interest rates are not going to flatten out anytime soon.
Yeah.
They're certainly not going to decline, with one little asterisk. We didn't expect the banks to fail last week. We didn't expect banks in the industry to fail. And so what that's going to do for the Fed is anybody's guess. If you look at the market suggests that there's a downturn in swap rates. So I think we're going to have to hold on for a little bit, but I think now buying and financing equipment is much safer than trying to figure it out in December of this year.
Yeah, so there's the news, folks. Get online right now, talk to the guys, make sure you're purchasing it at the right time, because, holding back with anything, when we see this is an entrepreneurial country, get out there, make some money, earn a living, work hard. Matt, Mike, that's really great. And I think the one thing I would say is, when we're looking at that asset, we want to add value, Alex. And I think the adding value piece for me is really important, because when we see something, we can put some extra hours into it so it works longer. We put all the smart equipment elements into that from Smart Equip. How does it work then when we're looking at, there's my asset, here's the inspection report, I've done my own thing, and I'm looking at this asset. I don't really know much about how to look after it, but where do I get the parts, and where do I get the fair rate for the parts in the first place? Like you were talking about the fair value.
Yeah, and that's what we specialize on at Smart Equip. So we've been around for 23 years. We're one of the younger Ritchie Bros. Family companies, in the sense that we've been here now for about 16 months or so.
Yeah.
But the focus for us was, there are the two bookends to total cost of ownership. You buy a piece of equipment, and at some point you're going to sell it.
Yeah.
And the difference of that is one large chunk of what your cost of ownership is throughout its life. But then every year you consume parts and you consume service. And if you look just at the direct costs there, if you're looking at a brand new piece of equipment, typically per year it consumes about 3-4% of its original equipment cost. That goes up as it gets older.
Yeah.
It goes up as a percentage if it's a used piece of equipment, because that tends to be less expensive, but the consumption goes up. And you find roughly the same amount in service. So that's there. And obviously that can become quite a substantial cost. That's a direct cost. But then when you dig into this, and this is really why we built the company we did, we wanted to bring efficiency to it. Not just make sure that your parts spend and your service spend is controlled, which is part of the value proposition, but really that every single time you're doing a repair or searching for the right part in the right place, your equipment isn't working. And that's really the big cost. And nowadays it's standard for all of us to think about uptime. Within the equipment space, it was originally the rental industry that really drove it, because if the machine isn't working, you can't rent it.
Yep.
But it's really now permeating everything. So even though the focus is on parts and services, the two other elements of the equipment life cycle, or the total life cycle costs, starting with acquisition and disposition at the end, it's really what's the return on the asset? How can you put it to use, and how can you maximize its use? And much of that is really the parts and service side of the equation.
And I think it's really important to understand that when you're putting added value into a piece of equipment, and that's what brings us over to Bob. Bob, you're a dealer, and please introduce yourself and explain a little bit about the business first, so we can understand what you do, and then I'm going to touch on some of these points when it comes to the value elements and the parts elements, and really ask you how's that's working in the market and how that has actually changed and will change as we go forward.
My name is Bob Levy. I'm the Vice President of Alter Construction Equipment. We're a $1.5 billion company. We're located in 14 states. So it's a big company. There's a lot of used equipment being bought and sold constantly. So you got to be always on the cutting edge. The market's fluid. It's changing a lot. So what we do is a lot of customers will come in. They want to trade in their equipment. They want to buy new equipment. How do we value that equipment? How do we buy it right? How do we give the customer enough money to want to do business with us and buy the new piece? Rouse is a big part of our everyday structure. It's such a great tool for us to use. We're constantly pricing equipment so we can buy it, pricing equipment so we can give values to trade. So it's to supply all the needs that my company needs. Our company needs all of them. It's a beast. Okay, like I said, 14 states, we have over 200 salesmen. It's pretty tough to get equipment right now.
Right.
So we're constantly out, not only taking trade-ins and selling equipment, we're constantly buying equipment. So when we buy it, you have to buy it right. And again, I use the Rouse platform not only to sell equipment, to also buy it. I want to buy it right. I want to buy it, if I can, at that wholesale level. So I can come in, I can fix it up, I can do whatever I need to it, so I can sell it for that retail pricing. I purchase equipment at auctions, which has been pretty difficult lately because the auction prices are almost retail pricing.
Really?
Yeah. There's no steals at the auction. I mean, it's been difficult to buy used equipment because the demand has been so great. Because there's supply chain issues.
Yeah.
There's manufacturers can't manufacture fast enough for the needs that are going on right now. In certain parts of the country, they're just exploding for B1. There's thousands of people every day moving in. So there's a lot of needs that our customers have and our employees have. And so buying and selling at the right price is critical. And you have to have the tools to do it. And like I said, Rouse has been a bit of a godsend for us. The market is so fluid and it's changing so quickly. And they have up-to-date data. And that's just one of the ways we use it. We also use our own depreciation cycles on how we price equipment. But you have to stay on top of it. You have to do it daily.
Matt, I'm going to ask you about that. Rouse has been mentioned there. It is a Ritchie Brothers company.
Yep.
And I think, what I'd like to explain briefly there is what Bob's talking about is looking at something that's fluid, looking at the data. What is the data that he's looking at, and also what is that button that he can now press that sends it to sale, that gets it off the books?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most, so once again, we've evolved into a marketplace, and one of the critical factors in a marketplace is data, right?
Yeah.
We want to be transparent about the data, whether it's the inspection reports, whether it's the price of the machine, whether it's cost of repair, cost of financing, those sorts of things. Data abounds, right? But the data Bob's talking about is we track sales of equipment around the world across all channels. So auction channels, Rouse also works with customers to track sales in the wholesale channels and the retail channels. And all of that data is aggregated. And what that aggregated data, when we bring it all together, we normalize it, right? Rouse has built a lot of technology around taxonomy and understanding what is what and where it's sold. And we give folks like Bob the ability to, price equipment effectively and quickly, right? Because it is, I mean, these machines are expensive, right? I come from eBay. It's not like selling Beanie Babies, right? Although, back in the day, Beanie Babies got kind of expensive. Yeah, okay. It's like, but anyway, these things are expensive, and you really have to know what you're doing when it comes to pricing the equipment. And the way you can do that nowadays, it's a little bit like Moneyball. We have data, we have machine learning, AI to help, folks like Bob and everybody in the industry understand what this machine is worth, depending on which channel I sell it in. And that's really the value that Rouse has brought to the table.
And I think that's really important because we're always talking about this mix, Mike, of value, of added value, of real value, of perceived value, of all of this stuff. The word is value. When we're looking at a life cycle as well. And I think the challenge when we come to finance things is, what does that flexibility look like? What can we do when we're saying, actually, look, we have grown a business. We are outgrowing what we need. We need to get more finance. We need to switch this out. We need to change it. And you have actually got that role of saying, hey, we want to support you as a business in doing that. But equally, you need to understand that if that switched out value is right or wrong, don't you? How does that work when I'm looking to grow and when I'm looking to move fast in an industry that is moving so fast right now? What do we do?
Well, from our point of view, it's really managing the assets and working with our partners to manage those assets, manage the value, the tangible value of those assets, and then being able to provide solutions that actually work for that customer. Being able to trade out of equipment without heavy, steep penalties. Being able to relocate equipment easily. Being able to swap equipment out easily. Supporting our clients for rental programs, month-to-month rental programs, to give them even greater flexibility. But again, it's understanding their business much more than what we understand finance. My folks on the street that support these customers of ours and our people internally, they understand the industrial industry. They understand earth movers. They understand people movers. They can get finance transactions on the books. They don't need to figure that out. We got systems to do that. They really need to be tight with our customers because their needs are changing, sometimes monthly, sometimes quarterly.
And that's one of the things, as we've become more of an online business, right?
Yeah.
We still have, very, very strong relation, physical, we're here meeting with our customers, but also the online nature gives us that data to, when we pass it downstream, it allows these guys to make better decisions and so forth. And so once again, it's that ecosystem of data, things are starting to come together, things are starting to get more connected, right? And that's critical, right? In terms of, not only from the purchase stage, but through the entire life cycle will help make that owner, as you talked about earlier, more efficient. They can focus on their business, they can focus on their problems. These guys here can handle all the rest.
I think that connection is that's the big evolution that's taking place. This API integration and be able to take that transaction off the streets in minutes instead of days or hours, and take care of that customer, say, get the equipment and go use it. It's that API integration with partners like Ritchie Bros and many others that help us through technology to help their customers.
And we talk about that with parts.
Yeah, that's the connection. We're making a lot of connections here now, folks. The connection piece. We talked earlier, Alex, about something that's lost to the dealer, that's lost to the manufacturer because it's gone through to different owners, and now it reappears because of smart equipment. And I think that was a real fascinating moment for me because that really re-engages the whole piece of the asset in the world around us, doesn't it? How has that really impacted? Because it's a new type process, isn't it?
Well, by chaining together the life cycle, right? And chaining together means we have different solutions that are available, and it's now the equipment as opposed to who owns it, as opposed to what stage of its life it's in. It's really following it through the life cycle that now makes it visible in ways it wasn't before. To be sort of more specific, manufacturers, I think, have always had a love-hate relationship with auction companies, for example, globally, partly because once it gets, you need them to sort of start selling new stuff again. But once you sell through that kind of channel, it usually disappears. And that's changing because we're now in that life cycle as a world. We're in that life cycle through integrations and other means. It may very well be that you're selling a piece of equipment in one part of the world, it gets shipped to another part of the world, and as they register it in this whole life cycle transaction, this whole marketplace, it'll also enable you electronically to get retethered to a dealer.
Yeah.
And you will want that because that's how you get all your service and parts information to service support, even if you do it yourself. You can use them obviously for that service. So the world is tilting that there was a part of the life cycle where equipment was visible to the manufacturer and then it went dark quite often. And so it's like you've put the lights on it and you see it now through several stages. And so now the economics of it are moving from the individual ownership life cycle to the entire equipment life cycle, which we call cradle to grave, right? And that's really what's now being enabled through all of this.
I think what's really interesting is I've seen with Ritchie Bros in the UK that when the markets change, particularly the dollar against the pound, we become a much more attractive place to buy equipment and ship it over and do exactly what you've just said. And that's another place there for you, Bob, when you're looking at this online space with Ritchie Bros now. It's not just online in America anymore, is it? It's an online space where you're going, hey, look, we could buy from the UK, we could buy from other parts of the world, particularly through the Ritchie Bros space, and get it back into the marketplace and then do exactly that, re-register it for the customer. But the dealer proposition is really important because you want to win more customers over, and you want to keep those customers working with your dealer team and coming back and getting the service and having all of that process and getting the uptime and making the money and all of that sort of thing. So all of this comes into play, and it must benefit you, Bob. It must benefit your business.
You know, you're talking about the ambivalence of the auction company. Right? It's like we have a $400 million rental fleet in my company. Right? So when we go to, we like to sell maybe 10% of that a year. That's hard to absorb all that equipment. Some of these major rental companies, billions of dollars in fleet. And again, if they're divesting 10% of it, you cannot possibly sell that much equipment on your own. You have to use the auction process in some shape or form, and it works out very well. So it's it all ties back in. Inspection reports are key in today's day and age. Absolutely key. Because a lot of the things we do, we buy and sell online. I buy stuff from you guys all over the world. I buy from other customers, and inspection reports have gotten so good these days that they'll live by it and we'll live by it. So we put a lot of time and effort training our people to do proper inspection reports. We're very demanding when we buy from the auction process. We hope to buy an ironclad. We that ironclad report that we use. For instance, I bought 4 pieces in the last 2 weeks from the auction process. I bought 3 articulated dump trucks and I bought an L180H. And I felt very comfortable buying those pieces because of the process that a lot of these guys here set up. I'm able to do that. I'm able to move quick. I'm able to buy stuff all over the world because a lot of the services that are offered right here with these 3 guys.
So guys, we're coming to a close now with the whole of this panel, and I think I'd really like to start with saying thank you very much to all 4 of you for your contributions, but we're not finished quite yet, folks, because I'd like some final thoughts from each one of you. And Bob, we're going to finish the whole piece with you, so just get that thinking cap on right now. So Matt, final thoughts from you on this whole piece.
Final thoughts was just listening to Bob talk, right? And once again, how far we've come as a company from, we do auctions, but, we can help offline, we can help online, we can help with the services, we can help with the data. It's really good to kind of, hear that come from somebody's mouth other than my own. So
Fair
love
enough.
that.
Mike, for yourself?
I think it's embrace change. You have to embrace change, and you have to embrace automation. And I think if you look back at our relationship over the years and how it's evolved, where it was then and where it is today, it's night and day. And so if you're just going to stay in the same rut and you think that's going to that's going to stand for a decade, it won't. Not in today's environment. You've got to be able to connect. And I think that's the strengths of our organizations. We're connected.
Alex.
I thought I was smiling earlier when you talked about integration and the powers of integration, and it reminds me that it's easy to get very enamored with, hey, there's technology, there's new technology, and it allows you to handle complexities that previously you just couldn't. The thing we shouldn't forget is the equipment life cycle. Everything relating to equipment is really, really complex. Buying a part is complex because you need to know the make, the model, the serial number, you need to know the context, there might be interdependencies and all of these things. So it's not just that, hey, we can do what we used to do electronically and just do it faster and cheaper. We can now do things we could never do before. Yeah. We tried to do, and we were always aware that we're bleeding efficiency. It's not the 3% a year cost of parts. It's the time you lose in searching, and that's true for every single solution we've just discussed. So what makes it so exciting, it's a new world now. It's a new world that previously we just couldn't do any of these things, and now we can.
Bob, I'm going to leave the final point to you. Go for it.
Okay. Going back to the ambivalence of auction companies, when we set residuals, and this is where Mike can jump in on this, the world doesn't care what we sell for as a dealer. When they set the residual, they want to know what it sells at a public auction, at a public platform, because that's a true test of what someone is willing to pay for equipment. So the auction process has gotten so good, we've gotten good at it, the customers have gotten good at it, and we try to get those residuals up as much as we can. When we send equipment to auction, we clean it up, we paint it, we put tires on it, we want to get the best price possible. So the ambivalence of the auction companies, it is a necessary evil, and it works, and you got to be good at it, and they're very good at it.
So, folks,
that's what gives Mike the power to give us good residuals.
It's true. Fantastic. It's true. So, folks, I'm really pleased to say a huge thank you to Matt, to Mike, to Alex, and Bob for our really, really exciting panel here at the even more exciting CONEXPO 2023. It's been great to talk to you. I've
Peter.
learned something. I hope you've learned something today, folks, and have a great rest of the show, guys. Cheers.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thank
Peter.
you.
Thanks.